guided heritage walks in Fremantle long enough to know which stories sell and which ones ask for silence. The big Moreton Bay fig near the limestone wall belonged to the second kind. Officially, it was just a shade tree beside a lane that smelled of salt and rope. Unofficially, everyone called it the hanging tree. No black admitted why. No tour script encouraged the name. It persisted anyway, the way a bruise persists beneath makeup. One warm night after a tour, a couple asked me to take their photo under the canopy. I lined up the shot, counted down, and saw it through the screen before I saw it with my eyes. A pale ring around his throat, like a band of skin that had forgotten to be worn. When I lowered the phone, it was already fading. He didn't feel anything. He thanked me, kissed his partner, and wandered toward the glow of the cappuccino strip, laughing. I stood under the leaves with my heart, doing the small, stupid math it does when something old looks at you through something new. It happened again 2 nights later. A backpacker leaned back against the trunk, face lit by her phone. Her flash went off. My lantern sputtered. Branches sighed. And there it was, a whisper-thin collar around her neck, brighter than the rest of her skin, as if some hand had just adjusted it. She rubbed at nothing, frowning, then left. The mark receded as quickly and politely as a tide. I started avoiding the tree at the end of tours. People still found it. Fremantle is a city of funnels, lanes that tip you toward the harbor, stories that tip you toward the places they're trying to leave alone. Each time someone lingered beneath the fig past midnight, the same line appeared, sometimes faint as breath on glass, sometimes sharp enough to make me swallow. They never felt it. I did. In the wind, I heard rope, a soft, slow slide, the sound of emotion rehearsed into ritual. I went to the museum, to Tamsin, who knows the archives like a favorite walk. "There's nothing here," she said after 2 days of searching. "Prison hangings were recorded. This tree isn't in any of it." She tried to smile. Maybe it's sap reacting to sweat. Maybe it's my friend getting haunted by her own tour. But when I mentioned the rope sound, her pen paused mid-scratch. The wind told the truth the documents didn't. On nights when it came straight off the ocean, salty and cool, the fig settled. On nights when it corkscrewed down off the hills, dry, impatient, the leaves rattled like dried paper, and the marks appeared more often. I started bringing little offerings, a coil of old blue nylon, a brass bell I hung from a low branch, a line in my notebook that said, "We see you." The bell rang once on its own at 2 in the morning, a soft note so shy I thought I'd imagined it. No marks appeared that night. The next night, they did. What broke the refusal of the record was a rumor too small for official paper. In an 1899 Gazette, a magistrate mentioned unusual discipline at the waterfront. A week later, a letter to the editor scolded unsanctioned rough handling near the lane behind the limestone wall. No specifics, no names, history with its hands in its pockets. Tamsin's mouth went thin as a wire. "Enough to shame a place," she said, "not enough to change it." And some friends from the Historical Society. No speeches, no press. We stood in a circle under the fig and read the tiny clippings aloud. An elder fisherman spoke a story his father had told him in the kitchen after a storm, about men taking discipline into their own hands when the law took too long. He didn't look at the tree. He looked at his shoes. We wrote down what he said and what we could not say. We rang the bell and left the page in a plastic sleeve tied to the trunk with ribbon. For weeks after, the tree was quiet, not harmless, quiet. A tourist could rest beneath it and find only the chill of shade. The rope sound slept. Then summer arrived like it always does, and with it a night of warm inland wind and loud people, a group of friends, a birthday, a dare. A young man with a grin that wished it was braver than it was, backed up until his shoulders touched bark. His friends counted down for a photo. The bell moved without ringing. The mark appeared around his throat all at once, a perfect pale cuff that did not fade. "Stop," I said, not to the boy, not even to the tree, but to the old motion that had learned itself so thoroughly it kept running without anyone to run it. The boy laughed, confused. I stepped forward and put my hand on the ribbon. It felt warm from the day. I told the tree what we had written. I said the names we didn't have, meant for the ones who might have carried them. I said, "We witness, we keep." The cuff loosened. The boy rubbed his skin, unsettled for no good reason he could say. He rejoined his friends, and they left. The bell rang once, the smallest metal apology I've ever heard. Now, when I pass the fig alone, I don't hurry. I stand beneath it and let the leaves say whatever they want to say. Some nights, it is only the sound of a city breathing through trees. Some nights, a rope speaks. On those nights, I touch the ribbon and I answer with the few lines we made. The record a place needs to understand itself. The marks still appear sometimes, but rarely, like a memory checking to see if it still matters. On the best nights, the wind from the harbor threads the leaves. The bell keeps its counsel, and the tree is just a tree that outlived a story it never asked to hold. We left Lorne against the advice of locals and the map's quiet dignity. Stormlight had already flattened the sea into a sheet of metal, and the rain came sideways. Sam drove because she drives when things need doing. Aaron watched the lines. I watched the cliff and the dark, where it became ocean. The first whisper arrived like a draft through a closed window. I'm not sure I would have heard it if the wipers hadn't paused mid-swipe. A breath of silence between the rubber and the glass. It wasn't a word so much as the shape of one. The second whisper chose a sound that felt like left. It braided with the surf until I couldn't tell if the wave was telling us what to do, or the road was. "There is no left," Sam said, steadier than the car. "Left is the Bass Strait." But a minute later, the headlamps caught a gravel track peeling inland, marked by nothing except a few reflective tabs on trunks and a row of plastic-wrapped wreaths sunk into the verge, their ribbons running with water. We stopped. In the quiet, the ocean sounded very far away, which meant it was too close. The map app had no opinion about the track. "We should turn around," I said, thinking of the long backtrack to Geelong. Aaron had already opened his door. The wind took him sideways and gave him back. "Someone uses this," he called, torchlight shivering. "Look, fresh tire marks and candles melted into the gravel." We took the track. It climbed through eucalypts that smelled like the inside of a medicine cabinet and an axe. The gravel slid and then held, slid and then held. A bargain brokered by tires and rain. Twice we hesitated at forks, and twice the whisper found us again, closer to worse now, the way a radio station resolves itself from fuzz. When you turn the dial slow, the whole appeared sudden and domestic, a rectangle of weatherboard on stumps, with a vestibule light throwing a yolk yellow oval into the wet. Inside, a corkboard told the story of the place. CFA fundraiser sausage sizzle, yoga on Tuesdays, a notice about koalas crossing near Kennet River. At the back, a hand-painted banner drooped. We remember the 11. Beneath it, a table with laminated A4s, faces under summer sun, a dog, a baby in a cap, 3 cousins with the same smile. The captions in black marker said December, said anniversary, said bend. The breath left my body without telling me it was going. Sam read the place names. We drove past that lookout, she whispered. Just before the sign about rockfall, the whispers in the hall didn't sound like speech anymore. They sounded like a room deciding to keep company with us. We stood there, wet and quiet, until our phones blinked a weather alert that made no distinction between memory and forecast. Back on the track, the car felt heavier, as if it had learned something. The gravel delivered us to the highway further along, spat us out so gently, we questioned whether the detour had existed. Blue beacons blinked ahead. A ranger flagged us down. "You came from inland?" he asked, incredulous. "That track gets locked in winter." "It wasn't," Sam said. He nodded toward the darkness we had left. Face came down. "Big slide. 10 minutes ago. We've got 2 cars stopped on the city side. Lucky night for you." He meant it kindly, then he added, because he had to, "And lucky for me." Apollo Bay was a diagram of golden rectangles behind rain. We took a room we hadn't planned to pay for and sat on the bed covers with the television off, listening to the last of the weather climb down from its tantrum. None of us spoke for a long time. When we did, it was to decide to go back in the morning with flowers. The hall in daylight was smaller. Grief often is. The vestibule light was off. The door was closed but not latched. We left a bouquet beneath the banner, and each of us, without arranging it, set our palms on the table for a second, as if checking its temperature. It was warm in a way that didn't feel like sun. We drove the bend we had avoided. In daylight it looked ordinary, even well-meaning. A curve carved neatly into cliff, guardrail honest and bright. Above it, the slope wore fresh scars, a bulldozer napped behind cones. The ranger from last night waved at us and said the phrase people always say after near misses. "Could have been worse." He repeated it once to convince the morning. Then he touched the brim of his cap for the 11 and turned back to his work. We kept the rest of the trip, but the road kept us sometimes now. When a truck passes me on a wet night and the air pulls at the car in a way that feels personal, I hear the whisper again, not a command anymore, more like a reminder given in a voice I recognize but cannot name. If I ever forget the hall, I think the road will remind me. I think the ocean will too. Some places warn you, because that is the only way they know to make sure certain nights do not happen again. I listen for a living, not to music, to failure. I measure how badly rooms garble announcements and help them do better. At 2 in the morning, the Montréal metro belongs to its infrastructure. The stations are long, tiled throats. The trains are animals that sleep with one eye open. I was at 𝗪𝗏 with a laptop, a microphone on a stand, and a thermos that pretended to be coffee. Sweeps work like this. You play a sound that crawls from low to high, and you record how the room mangles it. You subtract what you put in from what you got out, and the difference is the truth about the space. That night, the truth about 𝗪𝗏 included something I had not put in. A smear in the lower mids, right where human panic lives. It nudged my ear the way a draft nudges a candle. I ran the test again. The smear stayed. It was strongest near a service door painted city issue gray. The handle stung my palm with old coal. I wrote a reason in my log, anomalous resonance, possible hazard, and went in. The corridor smelled like dust and ended jobs. My torch caught a metal cabinet with a glass door and a red sticker. Do not service. Replacement pending. Inside, a black box recorder waited like a dog that no longer expects to be called. I turned it on because curiosity is a virtue, decorated as a sin. The room filled with station life at speed. Brakes, PA chimes, voices scattered like marbles on tile. The recorder hopped hours until it landed on a particular afternoon. I shut it off. The chamber shrank around me. When I took the headphones off, the smear was still there, even without the box, thin and stubborn, like a stain you only see from certain angles. I called Valerie, my supervisor. She said there was no incident logged for 𝗦𝗪𝗜𝗡𝗥𝗡 that matched the sound. She said she would come anyway. By the time she did, the room had the patience of a bureaucracy. We measured properly. Impulse responses at different points, a map of the smear's intensity. It pooled at the base of a stairwell under a grating. When I pressed my palm to the metal, the echo climbed my bones. Valerie made a call to operations. An older man in a high-vis vest arrived with the posture of someone who had been in tunnels when they taught him what they were. He did not open the folder he carried. He looked at the grating and said, 17 years ago, protest crowd. Someone fell between cars near here. Didn't die. A friend had the sleeve of his jacket and didn't let go. No public report. No closure. Nothing the system would own. People involved didn't want to be made into an incident. They wanted to go home. Then why does the station still have it? I asked. Because places keep the shape of what almost happened, he said, not unkindly. And because strangers who saved each other deserve a physics that remembers. I came back the next night alone, because some listening is only honest when it is singular. I sat on the stair and waited. The last train shoved a gust down the platform and was gone. The smear thickened, then unspooled. I didn't hear the scream. I heard the second before. The friendly, impatient Montréal, ça va, of a voice that cares but needs you to move. A laugh that didn't know it was about to be repurposed as a talisman. The misplaced foot, the gasp, the grabbing of a sleeve. Both bodies negotiating the weight and balance with a century of tile. The sound of two lives agreeing to continue. I didn't press the box again. We replaced it, eventually, with a fresh unit that would not record ghosts. We archived the anomalous audio with a label that allowed it to exist without asking anyone to explain it. Historic resonance, training. I sent my reports. I wrote down the numbers that proved what the room had already told me. 2 weeks later, I was heading east on the Green Line. When I heard a laugh, I knew. 2 men stood near the door, older but not yet old. One placing his feet carefully, the other, S-hand, hovering in the generous way you do when you want to help without taking away dignity. They spoke about nothing and everything in that small joy of winter coats and routines. I did not interrupt them with the story of the stairwell. The station already had it. Sometimes at night I still go to 𝗦𝗪𝗜𝗡𝗥𝗡 with no gear. I stand at the grating and lay my palm on it, like you do a forehead in the dark, to make sure the fever is broken. Sometimes I hear only trains and the sigh of a city lowering itself onto a pillow. Sometimes the echo runs the rehearsal again, but it stops where I most want it to stop, at the sleeve, at the laugh that becomes permission for the day to continue. I go home lighter. The room keeps the rest. The sound changes.